Hello, and welcome to Handled Ish Productivity for the Imperfect, a weekly podcast for those who want to elevate their productivity but are not looking for perfection. I'm your host, Betsy Hayes, and I am really happy you're here with me in podcast land or on YouTube. This is episode, should have looked that up, 47. And today I want to talk about intentions versus resolutions, or maybe not versus resolutions, but intentions and resolutions. So at this recording, it's the middle of December, and obviously at this time, as we approach the new year, there's a lot of conversation about, are you setting New Year's resolutions? Are you doing a word of the year? Are you setting intentions? Right? There's a lot of dialogue surrounding, as we launch into the new year, how are we going to make it the best year yet, right? Whether that is from a productivity standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, a career standpoint, a relationship standpoint, or all of those standpoints. Obviously, the definition of the best year yet is completely subjective to the individual. So obviously resolutions are something that has been around forever, and I feel like the tide has turned on resolutions over the last few years. I'll be curious if you think that's true. I feel like people are kind of anti-resolutions. I don't make New Year's resolutions. I don't like New Year's resolutions. I always fail at New Year's resolutions. The research isn't great, right? About how many people, I think it's like 6 weeks, and most New Year's resolutions are, completely not in the picture anymore. And so that's kind of an interesting sort of transition, right? I think New Year's resolutions used to be a lot more popular in the past. However, there's nothing wrong, right, with making New Year's resolutions, deciding that, starting in January, you potentially are going to create some new habits or, work toward accomplishing new goals, those sorts of things. I think, that can certainly have value if that sounds good to you. If it sounds awful to you, please do not set any New Year's resolutions. But like anything else, right? Excuse me, you need to set yourself up for success. So if you are going to pick a New Year's resolution, make sure it is something that you actually want to do. Make sure it is something that you feel like you at least have the start of a clear path. Perhaps you don't have the entire path laid out, and that might not be a bad thing because there might be, learning and, thoughts that you might need to acquire along the way, but at least have a pretty good, game plan for getting started and getting rolling. I, find that for me, and I think a lot of people have this, that if it's not on the calendar or on the to-do list, it doesn't happen. So what can you do with your calendar and your to-do list to support the idea of actually accomplishing your New Year's resolution? So really think through how you're actually going to do the thing, because otherwise, right, you're going to be part of that research that 6 weeks in, you will have forgotten all about it. And I feel that if you are spending time thinking and planning, or at least thinking about a resolution, I want you to achieve it. So set yourself up for success. Figure out your path, your calendar, your to-do list, your steps on the right direction, and see what you can do. Starting small, of course, is frequently the path for success. There's, of course, been a lot of research on that too, right? The smallest possible chunk. What is the easiest step that you could accomplish in order to move forward, towards your resolution or towards your goal, to, get an early win, get momentum, all kinds of good stuff. So those are things to think about with resolutions. Intentions, I feel are becoming more and more popular. That is the whole concept behind words of the year, right? Picking a word that really reflects what your intention is for the upcoming year. That can be, your intention as far as what you're going to do. That can be your intention as far as how you want to feel. That could be your intention as far as what your filter is going to be, right? When you are asked to do things, you might reflect on your word of the year. And if it matches that vision, the answer is yes. And if it doesn't match that vision, perhaps the answer is no. And it probably should be no. I really love the idea of having a word of the year or a set intention as a filter. I think I think most of us, I know for myself, it's really important to have things like a filter. Some people like to articulate, what their values are and then match opportunities versus their values and, see if that is in sync. And if it's not, then obviously it's not going to happen. And you can do the same thing with your intention. Does this opportunity meet what you're intending to do for the year? Now, that's not to say that your intentions or even your resolutions have to be set in stone. They can certainly adjust based on, things that come up that you didn't anticipate, right? Those can be, on the continuum of things, those can be really, awful and derail you, like a life quake. We talked about that. Those can be absolutely amazing and you didn't see coming, but they are changing your life in such a great way. And then most things, of course, are somewhere in between. So adjusting, of course, as always, during the process is completely allowed. You can do intentions for the whole year. You can do intentions by quarter. That's what I chose to do in 2024. I'm still thinking about whether or not I want to do quarters or just a word of the year for my intentions. But if you can't commit to a word for the whole year, again, potentially, having 4 words, right, as you think might match the quarters might be good. Or if you don't want to commit to 4 words, perhaps you just commit to an intention for the first quarter. And then after that, evaluate and see how it goes. Overall, I think something to keep in mind, in my opinion, I think this should all be fun, right? When you think about your intention, you should be excited about what's going to happen in the new year. When you think about your resolution or resolutions, you should be excited about the opportunity to accomplish them in the next year, which this one happens to be 2025 is what we're coming up against. So yes, all of those things may or may not be swimming around your head right now, like they're swimming around mine as we approach the end of 2024 and into the next year. So I'm curious what you think. Do you set resolutions? Do you hate them? Do you not even think about them? Do you set intentions? How do you do that? Is that a word of the year? And how does that manifest itself? How do you remind yourself about the word of the year? You can use, sticky notes. Some people put it on jewelry, put it in your planner, your desktop background, your phone background, whole bunch of ways to keep all of this top of mind. I'd be curious as to how you do that as well and what works best for you. Above all, I just highly encourage you to have fun with this. A little bit of a lighter touch is some of the things that we've talked about that in conjunction with other things in the past. But yeah, have a light touch. Please don't let this be heavy inside your head. This really is supposed to be fun. And if it's starting to feel heavy, just don't worry about it. You can also have this conversation with yourself in January or any other month. They're really, I hate to say this, some people might get upset, but there really is nothing magical about January 1st. It is a day like any other day. It just happens to be the start of the new calendar year. And so that's where a lot of people, like the fresh start and the beginning again, which a lot of us do. But there's nothing wrong with having your resolution/intentions start in March or on, January 6th or, whatever. Again, you want to use these tools to help you accomplish what you want to do, what being productive and happy means to you. And don't let anybody tell you what to do. Don't measure yourself up with what anyone else is doing. If you want a word of the year and no one else in your life does, no problem. You can have a word of the year. It's totally fine. And I know this sounds a little bit silly, but we're all a little bit exhausted at the end of the year. And so sometimes that's when that FOMO and, perhaps envy and jealousy can chime in because we just, aren't having our full set of resources to, remind ourselves of how unhealthy and ineffective that is. So a little side note. All right. So would love to connect at Betsy Hayes on social media or my website, BETSY, the letter, excuse me. Let me start over. BETSY, the letter A, HAYS.com. Please subscribe, rate, review, all that kind of good stuff for the podcast. And tune in next week for the next episode of Handled Ish Productivity for the Imperfect. And until then, please take care and please be kind to yourself because you are doing so much better than you think you are. Trust me. Take care.